Hello there, thanks for stopping by. Welcome to Messing About with a Narrowboat. I'm still in the garage and I'm still painting the headboard chest of drawers. In this episode, it's part 2 of our heating episodes. And this week we're having our Calorifier and Webasto fitted. I'll show you how we correct the mistake with the radiators that I did in the last episode, and I'll take you through the Calorifier and Webasto Thermotop Evo installation. So at the end of the last episode, I got a bit of a downer. Turned out I'd mismeasured the radiators, and I couldn't understand why I had mismeasured them. And there's a few reasons for that, and it's worthwhile shouting it out if you're doing your own boat. So I picked 600mm high radiators, including the towel rail, and I had measured it all, and it all fitted. What I didn't take into account is the size of the connectors and the size of the batten for the boxing in. So even though I had worked out where all the pipes were going to go and the height of it and the height of the radiator, I completely utterly forgot about the boxing in. So when I came to fit them, two things happened. On the towel radiator, because you want to get towels behind it, I put it on too low, and that gave me a problem connecting. But on the other radiators too, it's a bit tight for boxing in. And I can see, some people put their pipes on the floor, and I did not want to do that. I just wanted them on the skirting, on the side of the wall, so that I can make little shelves under the gunnels. So it was just all neat and tidy. And then I changed some of the plumbing. It was just like mistake. I didn't catch it until we actually came to fit the radiator, and well, I'm still a bit down about it. I've got a number of ways to fix it. Certainly by 500mm tall radiators or less. Can't get a 500mm in that style. Plus, with the Webasto being fitted in a few days' time, I really don't have time to go and order new radiators. If I put the Webasto installer off, it could be months before I get it done again. Yeah, difficult one. I have fixed the bathroom radiator. I've resolved the issue. It's a bit of a bodge, but I have no choice given the time constraint that I've got. I've got to get these radiators fitted today because I've got to get the Calorifier in and for the Webasto. So after, I think it's been 3 hours now, I've managed to get this sorted. But there are a lot of compromises. So when I measured all the other radiators, I measured the radiator has an L shape or a T bracket. Yeah, like that one. Tile radiators have straight brackets, and those are 70mm long, and that was causing me a major problem with pipe fitting. So the obvious answer was to move it 70mm up, and that gave me a bit of a problem as well. If I'd only moved it up 70mm, I wouldn't have been able to get the pipe boxed in and all the fittings covered. As it is, it's pretty darn tight to get that boxed in. But I think we will we will manage it. And by lifting it up so high, I'm so close to the gunnels that the radiator was sitting right under the gunnels, which means I wouldn't have been able to get to the bleed valve. So if I push it back like that, there's just no way I can get to service it. So I've had to pull it out, but the bracket isn't long enough to do that. So I've had to sit it on a couple of blocks just to lift it out. And I've triple checked and the door won't catch on the radiator. That was kind of my bigger worry. If I pull it out a bit, will it catch the door? I think if I'd put a bigger door in, it definitely would. But I've been lucky. So a bit of a bodge. Adapt and overcome is a more positive way of saying it, I think. I've adapted, I've overcome the problem. We can move on. So it goes without saying, if you watch these vlogs because you're doing a project or thinking about doing a project and you're just trying to get a feel for things and look at what other people do, careful consideration of radiators. And it's not just the size of the radiator in terms of BTU for the diesel heater that you may or may not use. It's not just the placement of that radiator, it's the size of the pipe work, where you run your pipes. Consider battening in, consider the size of the connectors, because the speedfit connectors are quite bulky. And that's what caught me out. So I think if I'd had the time and the money, because I can't return those because I bought them more than 28 days ago, so I'm out of the return zone. I could go and buy a bunch of 500mm radiators and spend another £400, or can adapt and overcome. So it's time to fit the radiators. Now I'm sure you've seen loads of videos how to fit radiators. So I'm going to quickly rattle through what we need to do here. So in order to connect the pipe, we need a T-piece and an elbow. Now there are 90-degree elbows and 135-degree elbows. These are what I'm going to use, and it will vary depending on how big your radiators or how deep your radiators come out from the wall. But these allow me to get the pipe in, get the elbow in, and then it pulls it out and goes up right into the valve. I'm using copper pipe into the valve. Some people use chrome, but my understanding is that chrome pipe doesn't do well with speed fittings, and you have to file off the chrome. We've got so little pipe showing that I'm just going to use copper, and I'll put a chrome pipe liner on it. Cheap and cheerful, and it's a bit less work. I can't be bothered sitting filing a pile of chrome off a copper pipe. So first job, let's cut the pipe. Oh, not that one, that one. Good. And then pipe inserts. pipe. Now the BSS says that all pipes with a join have to be supported either side of the join, so I need to move that pipe clip and put another one in. Do you know how I said don't cut the top pipe? I cut the top pipe.
What an idiot.
I'm really having a fight with these plumbing things, aren't I? Right, off to get a couple of joins. Right, just cutting the pipe. To the right length, to the right pipe. Okay. And then we deburr it. And here's a tip. When you get a roll of, or a bit of copper pipe from the shop, the factory end is usually pretty sharp and pretty square. Speedfit doesn't like that. Speedfit likes a nice beveled edge. So I'd say cut off a little bit of the pipe to give yourself a nice beveled edge from your pipe cutter, and then deburr it, and Speedfit will like that. It just doesn't like that sharp straight edge that you get from the factory. Right, that's the pipe in, and just nip it up to close off the olive. Not too tight, just make sure all those are tight. And that's it in, along with a stupid mistake. And hopefully you can see why the 135 stem elbows are a better choice than the 90-degree one. But as I said, it will depend on how far out your radiators come from the wall. Visit to the shop later. I've got that join put in place, so that radiator's fitted, the towel rad is fitted, and the bedroom rad too. It's all done. I've used copper pipe, but you're not going to see much of it. I'm pretty pleased with the solution for the towel rail. In the end, you can still get a towel on the top rail, and I've got enough room just for the trim. Just. So, from what looked like an absolute mess, I've managed to salvage it, so I'm happier. Well, I tell you what, I slept a lot better last night. The worry of these radiators has been amazing, really. Just a lot of worry, a lot of fret. But, thank goodness, sorted. Just in time for the Webasto guy coming tomorrow. Oh, that's a relief. Now I haven't pressure tested any of that pipe work, so first time we're going to know about a leak is when we start filling up the tank. Primary job today is unboxing the calorifier and tidying up all the packaging from the radiators. There's a lot. Now, for those that don't know, this is a calorifier. If you do know, you can skip this bit. So calorifier is a off-grid hot water tank. And I say off-grid because it's a bit like a domestic water tank. It's either copper or stainless steel. I've got the copper one. But it does lots of functions. And it looks a bit unwieldy, but it isn't really. So at its simplest, cold water is plumbed in at the bottom. So the cold comes from the water pump and into the tank, fills up the tank. It gets heated up and hot water comes out of the top. Now that hot water can be extremely hot, seriously hot. So you also have a cold water feed here into effectively a mixer tap. So cold water, hot water, and then that's your hot out. And it's got a little thermostat. I think maximum's about 65 degrees. So anywhere between 60 and 65 is about right. So that's really simple. One connection, two connections for cold, and one connection out to hot. So like the cold water pump feeds into an accumulator tank to balance out the pressure, the hot water cylinder feeds into an expansion tank to balance out the pressure. This thing can get really hot, and as we all know, when hot water gets very hot, like boiling, there's steam in there, there's heat in there, the water expands in the heat, and it has to go somewhere. So the expansion tank is used to balance that out. This is a 5 litre expansion tank because I've got a 55 litre calorifier, and it's roughly 10% of the tank size is your expansion tank. So an 8 litre would be okay, but probably a bit too big. This also provides some additional pressure to make sure that the hot water gets shoved around the system. The other element to note is this bit. This is a pressure release valve. So if the pressure in the tank and the expansion tank gets so great, above 46 psi, I think it is, 3.2 bar, then that pressure relief valve will activate and boiling water will come shooting out of here. So we need to make sure that we connect that pressure relief valve to a skin fitting so that it goes out of the boat. Some people put their pressure release valve outlet into their bilge. That's not a good idea, because all that water is going into your bilge, and if your bilge pump has failed, you won't know about it until all that water starts to sink your boat. So the PRV, pressure release valve, gets fed to the outside. So how does the water get heated? So in the water tank, obviously it's a water tank, but around the outside there's some coils of pipe. This is a twin coil calorifier, which means there are 2 coils of pipe, and it's those coils of pipe that heat the water inside. The heating water, the heating feeds don't get close to the hot water itself. They just run round the outside to heat it up. And that's where these connections come in. So there are 2 coils, so one in, one out, one in, one out. The bottom 2 come from the engine. Just like in a car, motor vehicle, the engine is heating up coolant, and that coolant circulates around the engine to keep the engine cool. Then it passes by a fan to cool the coolant before it feeds back through into the engine. Now, narrowboats, and probably most boats, although I'm not that familiar with them, don't have engine fans, because the water is cooled by passing the hot water from the engine round a skin tank in the boat, which is to the outside. So basically you're using the canal water, the river water, to cool the engine hot water. So we can take advantage of that. We can direct the feed from the engine before it goes into the cooling tank on the side of the boat. We can direct that into the calorifier. So we connect the feed and return pipe from the engine. So engine heats up the coolant comes in here, comes out here, and goes back round, goes round the coil, and then goes back out into the skin fitting, the skin tank, to cool the coolant before going back into the engine. That makes sense? So one way is to do the engine. The second way is exactly the same, but from the Webasto or whatever diesel heater is getting put in place, if there is one. Some people use the reflex stove. But the Webasto will heat up water that needs to be sent along the pipes, along to the radiators. So on its way back from the radiators, it comes into the calorifier, goes round the second coil to heat up the water, and then goes back into the diesel heater, the central heating boiler. Not on the output from the central heating boiler, because we want to push that all the way through the radiators. It's on the return. That water is still reasonably warm, and it can come in to the calorifier. So you've got two ways, mechanical ways of heating up water, either from the engine or from a diesel heater. And there's a third way, which is a good old-fashioned electric immersion heater. So a heating element that sits inside the calorifier. It can also heat up the water. That's a 1 kilowatt heater that's in there. So it'll burn through power like there's no tomorrow. It'll drain your batteries flat in about 15 minutes. So you only use the immersion heater when you're on hookup, when you're on shore power. However, there is a trick you can do called a solar dump, which is you can make use of any excess solar power that you have and direct that to your immersion heater. And we'll cover that when we do the electrics, but the Victron inverter charger has an option to do that. It's really clever. You can program it up to do a solar dump. So that's it. That's a calorifier. Clever little bit of kit. We just have to hook it all up now and put some connections through the bulkhead out to the engine in the Webasto. Now I've been holding off doing this until the Webasto and the diesel stove went in, so that we knew where things were going to be inside the engine bay, so that we can punch the holes in the right place. So we're going to do all of that at the same time as doing the Webasto install. All I'm doing today is prepping up the area and looking at the connections that I need to buy. So off camera, I dug out my old template for the bulkhead. So that's where the cupboard is going to go. And I've just marked out where there's a stud and a wire for the guys coming to fit, just so that they're, you know, taking the guesswork away. And I've run the cable for the immersion heater. So that cupboard there is going to be the heating cupboard, which will have the expansion tank and the Webasto expansion tank and a coat hook. So today's the day we get that calorifier all hooked up and the Webasto put in. Now Alec Fowler from Leaf Marine via Kings Lock Chandlery, where I bought the Webasto at Crick, is here doing the install for us. And he was able to do the calorifier at the same time, which, you know, saved me a job, and it's brilliant, and he's much more skilled than I am. So he does it in 10 times faster than I would. So Alec doesn't really want to be disturbed, he just wants to get on and do the job. So periodically I'll show you how he's getting on. It's the end of day one for the install, and I wish I had been able to give you an update earlier, but we were just in the way and he wanted to get on. So calorifier is in. The pipes for the central heating are in, not for the engine. The cold water feed is in, and as I said, cold water feeds, it gets teed off into the mixer valve and the hot comes out. So that's that. The hole in the bulkhead for the Webasto is done. The Webasto header tank is in. The Webasto boiler is also in, but not yet commissioned. And filling the system, there was a bit of a leak. One of the joints I hadn't pushed in the pipe far enough, so it was leaking a little bit, but we fixed that. And then a silly error on my part, I hadn't tightened up the bleed valve. I checked all the connections, everything except that one. Typical. So I've just got bits of kitchen towel on the ground just to satisfy my paranoia that we've not got a slow drip anywhere. And just before I go home, looks like we've got a little drip. Oh, something else to fix. These things are usually just the bolts, the valves aren't on tight enough, so I'll tighten it up. Now the other thing Alec corrected me on was the expansion tank. I don't need one. So I was sold and told that you need an expansion tank for your calorifier. Alec, the engineer, is saying you don't, because the calorifier's got a pressure relief valve in it, which feeds to the outside. So why do you need an expansion tank to manage the pressure when it's got a pressure release valve to release the pressure outside the boat? So I have been oversold an expansion tank. So hopefully you haven't skipped this little message that says you need an expansion tank like yesterday's little clip. You don't. And there is the Webasto boiler. So the pipes run to the inside. Got to fit the exhaust yet, but that's it. That's an expensive little bit of kit for central heating. Now I know you can fit these yourself, you know, but having Alec here to do the install has been amazing. It's just been so quick, so easy. Leave it to the people that know. Yeah, but he just cracked on with it. He's been here about 6 hours, and the only thing we've got to do now is commission the system and get the boiler firing up. It is actually quite a lot of work to fit this. Quite a lot of work. I've been watching Alec, and he's in and out and in and out, in and out the engine bay, fitting this, fitting that, measuring stuff out, getting it right, cutting holes in the bulkhead for the pipe work. Yeah, it's been a full-on day for him, and I am glad that he's doing it rather than me. It's a wee pity about the couple of leaks though, but nobody's perfect. And so the commissioning continues. We actually ran out of fuel. We put 20 litres in, but it needed another 20 litres. And Alec is now firing everything up and running all the diagnostics on it. So the way that fuel feeds work on your narrowboat is you've got 3 come out of your main tank, feed and return, and then another one for heating. And that heating one doesn't go all the way down to the bottom because you don't want it sucking in any crud, and you want to make sure there's enough fuel for running your engine. So I already had about 15 litres of fuel in the boat. We put another 20 in, and when he fired it up and primed the fuel pump, it took it below the where the pipe stem goes in. So we've added another 20 litres, and the good news about that is I know when we get to about 40 litres left, we are getting to the point where there's no fuel for the Webasto. And we've got hot radiators. Now, Alec is in the engine bay hooking up the engine to the calorifier, but I'm not going to video because the language is atrocious. And the last part is we're just running the engine to make sure that the engine heating elements of the calorifier are working. So I'm kind of sorry that I haven't filmed too much of it. The tradesperson, Alec, just wanted to get on. You know, time is money. He didn't really want pauses in what we were doing for me to video anything. And I had already explained how the calorifier works before. So, you know, it was just a case of, right, that's how it's getting connected. Let's get on with it. So it's in. It does look a bit like spaghetti, but it is in. So for the heating, hot water in and out from the Webasto boiler and in and out from the engine. Cold water in. Cold water gets mixed with the hot water and out. This is the header tank for the boiler. This is a pressure relief valve which goes to the outside. And this is the on-off switch. Now, because it's not like a domestic system, you don't need a programmer. So you don't time it to come on and off, and you certainly don't allow it to come on and off based on temperature. This is a small boiler that needs to run and run quite hard for a period of time. So it works on time more than thermostatic control. And you should run it for about 40 minutes at a minimum. Which, given the fact I'm still sweating because it's so hot in this boat from the heater. The heater was on for about an hour just to commission it all up, and the boat is still roasting hot even though it's all switched off. So none of the radiators have got thermostatic valves on them because it's recommended not to, so that it doesn't keep switching off. If it switches off and on based on thermostat, the unit will short cycle and it won't burn the fuel that's in it, and it will get all coked up and it will need fixing quite often. So that was the recommendation, no thermostatic valves. And we had to balance the radiators, and by that I mean that the radiator in the living room was getting warm but not hot, while the radiators in the bedroom and the bathroom were absolutely scorching. And that's just to balance flow. So we turned down the valve on the bedroom, the bathroom and the bedroom radiators, so that the water is slowed down here on return and feeding the living room one a bit more, and that balanced it all out. So that was the important things that Alec was telling me. No thermostatic control whatsoever. Now you can buy either a Google Nest, which will give you internet access. Actually, they're quite useful things because you can switch them on and off in different rooms. But a Google Nest or something like a Shelly switch, Shelly or Shelby? Can't remember, Shelly switch, which is a little internet enabled relay which you can switch on and off with your phone and put on a timer if that's what you wanted to do. But that means, something like that means that we can be off the boat and still put the heating on, perhaps before we arrive home, or perhaps when it's a very cold day and we're out all day, just have the heating come on for an hour, and we can do that via our phone. So that's the advantage of a Google Nest or a Shelly switch. I think you can do it from the Servo, a Victron Servo as well, because it's got a relay on it. And the final product in the engine bay, so that's the exhaust pipe, that's all the pipes to calorifier, that's the pressure relief outside, that's the fuel feed and the fuel filter, and the fuel feed from the engine, from the main engine tank. Now, Alec's from Leaf Marine, and I'll leave his details in the comments. He's been brilliant, you know, like all tradespeople, just wanted to get on. Yeah, would have been quite happy for me to talk to him, but really, time is money. He's got another job to go to, and he just wanted to do the stuff. Having the leaks, which kind of my fault. was a bit of a distraction. But quickly resolved, I think. And then, so all in all, I think it was the right thing to bring a Webasto certified engineer in. Yes, it cost me a bit of money, but he's done in a day and a half, day and 3/4, what would have taken me, I don't know, at least a week to fiddle around with and get right. The fact that he put his diagnostics on there, checked everything was right, and certified the installation, which means that one is I get an extra years of warranty from Webasto, but because of it, I'm also got global Webasto service call out. So if I have an issue with it, we can contact any local Webasto engineer in the country, and they'll be able to fix it because it is being certified by Webasto, and that's worth a bit of money. It has been quite stressful, I have to confess, and that's mostly due to my perfectionism. The having those leaks kind of freaked me out because, well, it's water and it's in a boat and there's quite a lot of water. And I was fretting a little bit about time and the need for it to be done at a particular deadline. So, but Alex was really cool and quite relaxed about it. He says, yeah, it's a leak. It's just, I get them all the time. Easy to fix, let's do it. Overall, the job is very neat. Now, initially I was going to put the calorifier through bulkhead fittings and make them waterproof, which is a nice way to do it. But he's basically said, drill a hole, put all the pipes through one place so you know where everything is, and then seal it up with spray foam. And that will stop any exhausts coming from the engine bay into the cabin. So it will minimize any carbon monoxide. I wouldn't say eliminate it, but it would, well, you can't eliminate it anyway, but it would, you're not getting diesel fumes and exhaust fumes coming through into the cabin. So spray foam to fill up the hole when I'm all done and finished doing all the wiring loom. So yeah, I'm kind of happy. So overall, a very neat job. And there's a very, very long wiring loom, I guess, so that you can have your electric cupboard, well, away from your engine room. But he hasn't trimmed off any of that wiring loom. He's left it really long so that when we come to do the fitting of the electrics, we've got somewhere, a length of cable for it to reach into. So that's it. That's the installation of our Webasto Thermotop Evo 5 kilowatt marine boiler. Done. Now, if you're interested, the leaks were a bent O-ring in the connector, the T-piece. The rubber O-ring was all bent out of shape, and that's what was causing the leak. Not necessarily anything that I did wrong, just the ones that I did wrong was the valves. So I didn't screw these valves in well enough, and I didn't have enough PTFE tape on them, so some liquid PTFE quickly solved that issue. But that just goes to show I had tightened those valves up really tight, as far as I could go, but because there wasn't enough PTFE, there was still gaps in the threads and the water came through. So that's it. That's the end of the two heating episodes, the Reflex and the Webasto. And I hope you got something out of it, if not just a giggle at the warts and all elements of me trying to fit radiators. So stressful. Anyway, so thanks for watching, thanks for liking, thanks for subscribing, and as I said, I hope you found some of it useful. And even if you're kind of thinking about Webasto or Eberspatcher or Chinese diesel heaters, you know, it's I'm not talking about those particular products, but that's the process, you know, connecting it up to the engine, connecting it up to the heating boiler, connecting it up to the radiators and the calorifier, and the things you need to be thinking about. Next episode's probably going to be quite boring. I bloody hope so, in comparison. Oh yeah, give me something easy to do. We're into August now and the weather is beginning to change. So I need to chase the remaining outside things that I've got to do. We need to paint the lockers in the bow and the stern. And I need to paint the deck. Now, we haven't done that because the deck is the only way in and out of the boat. So when I start to paint it, it'll be paint it and then come back next day for the second coat. There'll be almost nothing done inside the boat. It's probably a good opportunity to finish the painting for the headboard chest of drawers. So I'm not quite sure what's happening next week, but the weather looks like it's beginning to change and I really need to get the deck painted and finish all of that off. Plus, our grandson is on school holidays, so I need to shove him into the bow locker and get painting too. So there are only 4 big things remaining. Now that the water's in, it allows me to move forward significantly and get the bathroom finished. I've got to build the dinette, we've got to install the kitchen, and I've got to finish off the electrics. So yeah, 4 big ticket items, and wow, we're moving on at a pace. So until next time.